So welcome back to Khmer Voices, where we shine a spotlight on the achievements of the Cambodian diaspora around the world. I'm your host, OWNI, aka Vanny. You know, earlier in the year, I felt this heaviness. I felt that late last year too, you know, with all that's going on. And there's still a lot of things that are weighing on me happening around the world. But I do feel a bit lighter these past few weeks, and especially this past weekend. Did you guys watch the the Super Bowl? I mean, I was going to say, did you watch the halftime show? Because that's all I watched. I mean, that was a fabulous performance by Bad Bunny and everyone else that participated in it. I just, even though I'm not part of the Latin community, I did feel a sense of connection and pride. And I felt a lot of hope as well. And that's what excellent artistry is. You make people feel. Anyways, I'm just giving you an update on how I've been feeling these days, because I know in previous episode that I mentioned, things have been feeling a bit heavy here. Now, I have an exciting episode for you today. If you feel home ownership is out of reach for you, I've got a good episode for you. If you want to hear about how a single mother of 4 who had her first child at 18 found her way to starting a tech company and advising people on their finances and creating a safe space for women to learn and talk about money, then it's a must listen. Today, you'll be meeting Lin Sok. She is a 1.5 generation Cambodian Canadian from Montreal. And like many of us listening, she comes from very humble beginnings and is now an entrepreneur, a financial advisor, and a tech founder and community builder. As the founder of Women and Money Montreal and CEO of OWNI.ai, she blends finance, technology, and community to help people build wealth with clarity and confidence. She's been an expert source in Canadian national and local news and has also written a book, The Audacity to Own It. So check out the link in the show notes to get the book. Now, in the book, Lin empowers people to step into leadership of their choices, their life, and their future. And she challenges readers to stop waiting for ideal circumstances and just start acting by removing the emotions from their decision making. I hope you enjoy the episode with Lin.
Yeah, so this plays a huge part in everything that I am today, although sometimes I'm not the best Cambodian. So I was born, my parents, my family were Cambodian, and I was born during the genocide. So my parents and my brother actually escaped from Cambodia, and I was born in a UNICEF refugee camp in Chonburi, Thailand, on the border of in Thailand on the border. We came to Canada in 1980. I was a baby. December 1980. So that freaked out my whole family, seeing snow for the first time. I heard about it growing up. And we lived in Ottawa until 1986. And then that's when we moved to Montreal. So if anybody asks me, I am a diehard Montrealer.
You moved to Montreal when again?
1986.
Do you have recollections of when you first... Actually, no, you were a baby. You said you arrived...
Yeah, I was a baby. I was a baby when we got here, when we came to Canada. Mm-hmm. But I do remember growing up in Ottawa. So we lived in government housing until we moved out. And you know what? Since I was just in Ottawa a few weeks ago, and I said to myself, I'm going to visit the old house. I never went. So for anyone who's listening and lives on Russell Road in the housing projects there in Ottawa, I really want to go back. I want to knock on my old door and just kind of, because I remember the house. It was a big house.
Right.
I didn't know we lived in government housing. I just remember we lived in a big house. And then when we moved to Montreal, we moved into a basement, 4.5, a 2-bedroom apartment. And I wondered why we did that. But then, what did I know as a kid? In our family, with our extended family, we're the only family where the kids actually speak Cambodian. Everybody else is French speaking. Or like all of my cousins here in Montreal, they speak French and they kind of assimilated into Quebecois culture. But we all speak Cambodian because my mother only speaks Cambodian.
So in Ottawa, did you learn how to speak English and French?
English and Khmer because of my mother, but French I only
Okay.
learned once I came to Montreal.
Oh, interesting. Because there's a big, it's not too far away from Montreal, and
Yep.
it's the capital city of Canada. And I thought there were a lot of French speaking people in Ottawa as well.
There are, because I go back to Ottawa quite a bit, and there are.
Mm.
If I was only French speaking, I don't think I'd have an issue being served by the general public. But when I was growing up, I don't remember French at all.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So did you ever find out why you guys left this big house into
Yeah.
a basement suite?
Yes. So my father actually found a job here in Montreal, and I found out that we were moving maybe the day before or 2 days before, and was right around Halloween. So I missed Halloween that year. Not that we made a big deal about it, but we missed a Halloween that year. Moved to Montreal. My father started his job, and then he was laid off like less than a year later. So, this was something that I kind of thought about anyways. I adjusted to it, but I remember it. If I'm still talking about it today, it's because I remember we went from the big house to the small apartment, which was fine. Like a house is a home. I mean, my parents always
Mhm.
made our home very inviting to my friends. So I had a very, you know what? I had a good childhood, a great modest childhood, which explains a lot of how I am today.
How are you today?
I live very simply. I don't stress out very easily. I really don't sweat the small stuff, almost to the point that
Mm.
people think that I'm being passive. And it's not because I'm being passive about things. It's because I really don't sweat the small stuff. And, like I mentioned in the beginning, how I was raised has a lot to do with how I am today. And one of the reasons why I don't stress out about the small stuff, I don't get caught up in complaining, and I'm very much solution based, is because of my parents. And as a
Hmm.
child, they always reminded me, "Look, Lynn, we came to Canada because of a genocide. It's not because we chose to come here. When the war was going on, their house was bombed. So no matter what happens here in Canada, I will never have to worry that my home is going to be bombed." And
Hmm.
all this
Hmm.
boils down to that. How hard is it for me to face whatever barrier, whatever obstacle that I have to face? I mean, I was a single mom of four young kids at one point when I divorced my ex-husband, and people always say that must have been difficult. And sure, it was difficult, but I'll be okay. You just find another way. You use your sense of humor to get out of things, and try to figure out what's the next step. How do I overcome this?
Yeah, let's jump on that and then go back to your childhood. You said in a LinkedIn post once that one of the best decisions you made was divorcing your husband. What is that all about?
Mm. I would not be where I am today because of my parents, but also if I was still married to my ex-husband. And I'll tell you why. I was a young mom, so I was 18 when I got pregnant, much to my parents' chagrin. As a Southeast Asian daughter, that was not what was supposed to happen. And so we ended up getting married. We had 4 children together. But despite my age, I did what a lot of women do, is that once they get married and have children, they completely lose their identities. So I was in my 20s pretty much playing house, being the submissive wife, and taking care of the children, building my career. I had no identity anymore. My identity was my career, it was my children, it was my home, and it was me being the missus. And one of the reasons I know that we split up is because towards the end of our marriage, I started questioning that. And I started finding myself again. I started going out for coffee with my friends. And that caused a rift in our marriage and eventually the downfall. But after that, after we split up, I realized that I can't, not only can I not do that. We are responsible for our choices, good or bad. We need to take ownership of our lives, even if we make the wrong decisions. And I made it almost a mission to help other women and inspire other women and empower other women to step up for themselves and live your life. You are not tied to your career, your title of mother, or title of wife. You are you. So who are you?
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Was he Khmer?
No, he's not. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's go back to your childhood.
Yes.
So you're in Montreal now, and your dad lost his job within a year of moving there.
Mm-hmm.
And you said not to sweat the small stuff. So how did they handle that? How did you handle that?
I was young, so I didn't really know. I didn't really know what was going on. If I look back to that point in time, I remember he lost his job. I would assume that he was on employment insurance, so he was allowed to go back to school. So he did go back to school. That I remember. That's when he met his one and only friend. My father does not have friends, but not in a bad way. He just didn't believe in friendships. He thought that gets in the way of whatever it is you're trying to do, which is a whole other story.
Wow.
Yeah. So he did go back to school, but this was a different time, right? We're talking about the 90s in Canada, where it was high inflation. The job market was next to none. And at the time, there was a lot of ageism. So I'm going to assume that my father at the time was in his mid 40s, which is the age that I'm at right now, which I don't believe is old, but back then in the job market, that was old. Nobody wanted to hire you. So my father ended up opening up his own business, not because he was an entrepreneur, but because he couldn't. He had to. He couldn't find work. So he opened up an electronics repair shop, because back in the day, you used to repair your electronics. So he would repair TVs, VCRs, and anything electronic. And he had that store for several years, until he closed down because the economy changed.
Right. Well, people don't fix electronics anymore.
No, they don't. So,
but is that what he went to school for?
No, back home he was actually a professor at the university. So which one of those things when you come to Canada with certain degrees, it wasn't recognized here. He never went into teaching when he was in Canada. So when as far as I know, for work, he always dabbled in electronics. He was very technical. His official title or what he did for a living was not something he disclosed. My father was very secretive about things. So I don't know exactly what he did at the job that we came to Montreal for. I know what company he worked for. I assume that it's something with electronics. And then he opened up the store. But definitely not what he went to school for back home.
Were you surrounded by Khmers in Montreal?
Growing up, we had cousins. We had lots of cousins. I fondly remember every summer, almost every other weekend in the summer, we would head over to like 1,000 Islands. We were, 3 or 4 cars that would go. And it was a lot of fun. So I do have quite an extended family on my mother's side. But then something happened in high school, and I don't know why. My parents don't talk about it at all. But we stopped communicating with our family, and I haven't spoken to them since, because I would always speak to them through my parents.
What?
Yeah.
Do you have any desire to reconnect with them?
I think about what happened to them, and Montreal doesn't have we don't have a huge Cambodian population. So.
Oh, really?
No, not at all.
Do you know how? I thought it was bigger than Vancouver.
Really?
Vancouver, yeah.
I don't think we're even.
Vancouver is it's about 2,000 in the Lower Mainland, but around 4,200 in the province of British Columbia.
Okay.
So Toronto, I know for sure, has a sizable Cambodian population. And I thought Montreal was a good second, because you guys just had the Champa festival, right?
Yeah, exactly. As far as I know, we're 12,000 or so.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, and putting things into perspective, that is a lot bigger than what it is here in Vancouver.
But we also have a bigger population than Vancouver.
Right.
So
What's that?
We have a bigger population
Oh,
in general than
yeah,
Vancouver.
you're right. Hmm.
I would have expected more in Montreal simply because we're a French speaking
Hmm.
city, and French is a second
Hmm.
language in Cambodia. But that's the population. I So right now I'm not surrounded by a lot of Cambodians, especially English
Hmm.
speaking. I've met some on the
Hmm.
French side, but we're all kind of spread out.
When you were growing up, did you attend Khmer ceremonies and Khmer parties and such? How did your mom spoke to you in Khmer? But aside from, speaking to you in Khmer, what other traditions did you participate in that were Khmer
Well,
related?
we did go to the temple. I remember we went regularly. We did attend some
Mm-hmm.
festivals. When I was younger, a lot of my family was getting married, so we attended a lot of family gatherings, social gatherings. But again, as I got older, and I remember in high school, all of that stopped suddenly,
Hmm.
and it was strange. I asked about it. Not sure what happened, and that was the end of that. So pretty much, I would say after the ninth grade or so, I was just Lin, who's Cambodian, and usually the only one in the room.
Yeah.
And that was it. So it's something that like I've never been back. It's something that always piques my interest, but there'll be a time for and a place for it. I just don't know
Hmm.
how. It helps in
Hmm.
business though. It definitely helps being Asian and not being Chinese or not being Filipino, because here in Montreal, if you're Asian, you're either Chinese or Filipino. So the fact that I'm neither or, it helps in the business world because I stand out.
I feel the same way with my name. It's not too difficult to
Yeah.
say, but it's unique enough that people can remember it,
Mhm.
and it's simple enough too. And it's a Khmer
Yeah.
name, so I fully embrace it. I want to go back to when you mentioned that your dad was kind of secretive and doesn't really share things. Like, did he talk about his time during the genocide?
Yes. So that he did. My mother doesn't talk about it. And my brother, who was old enough to remember, he would have been at the time around 10 years old. So he would have remembered, but he never talks about it at all. So as a child, my father would talk a lot about the history and what happened during the genocide. Um, as a kid, he made me sit down and watch the killing fields, which is yeah, which is kind
I,
of which is kind of rough
you know,
as a 6 year old, 6 to 9 year old. I
yeah.
also watched a lot of documentaries uh, on what happened, so I was pretty aware of why we were here, and I think my father did that just to show us, especially me, because I didn't know. I think he did it to
Right.
show us how grateful we should feel for being here in Canada, and that
Uh,
we could overcome anything, and this is a land of opportunity and whatnot. And it really
yeah.
has, like, that's, even though it was a little extreme, I do thank him for that, because it's helped me build resilience. I feel that I could overcome anything.
Hmm. You're lucky that he is open to talking to you about that, because a lot of parents aren't.
Hmm.
Like my parents, I've never really, asked too many
Hmm.
questions because I just feel like it's a sensitive topic. And I feel like if they really wanted to share a lot more, they would.
Hmm.
And I would always get things in little snippets. I recently found out, for example, that the government of Canada sponsored our family. Unlike many other families where,
Hmm.
church organizations or other families, their own families sponsored them over.
Hmm.
So when the government of Canada sponsors over a refugee
Hmm.
family, you actually have to repay the settlement fees.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. And my mom just said, yeah, my mom shared randomly. I think I forget what we were watching, something related to Cambodia,
Hmm.
and she just randomly said, like, "Oh yeah, when I started working, we had to pay back the government for bringing us over to Canada."
Oh, wow. I didn't know that at all. We were sponsored by a family member who I mean, I know this is a podcast, but you know, as many years ago, we were sponsored by a family member who wasn't a family member. So it was a childhood friend of my
Oh,
father's.
yeah.
But I mean, that was back in the day, the good old days when there were no computers and you couldn't look things up online, and you know, you were just whoever you said you were.
Yeah. Well, they're also responsible for you financially,
Yeah,
right? So they took on that
risk.
liability.
Exactly.
Yeah, risk. Yeah.
Exactly.
Um, so it sounds like because your dad was a professor, education probably was very important to him
Yeah.
and to your brother and yourself growing
Mhm.
up.
Yes, exactly. It was school and everything. So I have a younger brother as well who was born here. He's
Oh,
Canadian.
okay.
So we're it's myself and two brothers. So education was
Mhm.
everything. That's our job, nothing else. No extracurricular activities. Although both my brothers did play sports, I tried to play sports, and my father tried to deter me from playing sports because my job as a child was to go to school and help around the house. That's it. That's all.
Mm.
Yeah. So I was a good student growing up. I was fortunate that I was one of those kids who didn't have to study that much. Always top of the class. I was very quiet. I was so quiet that you wouldn't even hear me say here during roll call. I was that quiet. So it's kind of funny now because I'm loud. Now I'm loud at the full of opinions.
Hey, it's the same. I'm the same. You know, they actually put me in English as a second language class because I didn't talk much.
Oh,
And they just assumed that I didn't know how to speak English, right? But you know, when you're young, you pick up a second language really
yes.
quickly. I started kindergarten. We arrived in 85, and I remember my first day of kindergarten. And then in grade one, I think it was in grade 1 or 2, they actually put me into ESL class.
Oh.
Uh-huh. And I didn't feel like I needed it, but I felt like it was an advantage
Mhm.
because what we learned in ESL class, it was more challenging than what was taught in the regular
Mm,
class.
really?
Hmm.
That's good.
Yeah. Like we were more advanced in terms of, you know, the alphabet and learning cursive
Okay.
and learning new words. Yeah.
That's cool. My brother, it's my older brother, he was around 10 when we came to Canada, but he didn't know any
Hmm.
English. And because education
Hmm.
is of utmost importance, what my father did is that on the paperwork he falsified my brother's year of birth. So
Uh-huh.
so instead of being 10 years old, according to the government, he was like 6 years old.
Uh,
Helps when you're a refugee and you know you haven't really eaten properly in your time.
Very
Yeah.
clever.
So my
Yeah.
brother now is, you know, he's whatever age he is, I can't remember, but he's
Mhm.
actually 6 years older than in real life. Yeah,
Officially, yeah.
exactly.
Officially, he's 6 years
Yeah,
younger, but
exactly. On paper, he's
okay.
6 years younger when he should be 6 years older. But that's what my father did because that's how important education was to him. He, you know, over his dead body, he was going to have a son who's 10 years old and failing because he didn't pick up the English language. So that's why he came back.
Right. Yeah, the older you get, the harder it is to pick up a language. But I feel like it sounds like he probably would have been fine too.
Probably, but we will never know.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll never know.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, what kind of you don't sweat the small stuff. So, growing up, did you feel any tension or struggles in your family and
All the time.
in school?
In the
Mm,
house all the time because my father was very strict. So at
mm,
home, my father was very strict, and I was the only girl. So I always felt like I was walking on eggshells. Never thought that my grades were high enough. You know, why did you get 90? Why did you get 90%? Why didn't you get higher? So I lived a lot of that, and it was difficult growing up, you know, being a girl, being the only girl. And those memories also stay with me. So it kind of explains how I behave now. You know, my husband and I now we joke around and say that I have daddy issues because of it. I'm always trying to prove myself and in particular prove myself to men. Not that I need their approval. It's more that I'm trying to prove myself to me because of a man, if
mm.
that makes sense. But
It's hard to deprogram what you grew up with. That's
it
why.
it is hard. But you know what? I see it in a different from a different perspective. Without it, I wouldn't have any fire. I wouldn't speak the way that I speak or be as assertive as I am, or I wouldn't speak up for those who I feel are being talked down to if I didn't feel the need to stand up for myself. So it's a weird, one day I hope a psychiatrist could break me down. I'd be like a textbook for them of who's having daddy issues. But I use that to move forward and to thrive.
So when did you make that switch?
My divorce.
Oh, that was the catalyst of it all.
It
Eh?
was. It
Wow.
was. So it started off. I know it's petty, but it started off with because how we split up was we were at a crossroads. We were living together for 6 months after we declared to each other that we were separating, but neither of us were budging. And one day I looked at him and I said, I can't do this anymore. This house is not big enough for the both of us. Who's moving out? And I remember he turned to me and he said, well, I'm not going to move out. You're going to be the one who moves out because you're a hustler and I know you'll be okay. What did I do? I turned around and looked at him and said, that's right. I'm a hustler. So I'm going to take my stuff and move out. And I started over. Silly me. Anyways, it's all part of the big picture story. So I started over on my own, had no furniture, nothing, really had to start from scratch. And initially
How old were you again
I was
at this point?
I was 30. I was
And how old were your kids?
my oldest was 11, my youngest was 2. So they were not
Wow.
old enough really to take care of themselves. Like my 11-year-old would have been old enough to take care of himself, but to take care of everyone else was borderline not acceptable by society.
Mhm.
So when I left and I was starting over, one thing that really motivated me was, well, I'm going to show him that I don't need him. And I'm not going to show him by telling him. I'm going to show him because he's going to hear about it. So that's what I did in the beginning. And now it's funny because that's so long ago, but I find that fuel that tell me I can't do something and I'm going to show you, not because I'll tell you or text you, but because someone else will tell you. So
Uh-huh.
that's what drives me in everything, like in business right now. Why do I do all the things that I do? It's not because I'm doing things at random. Everything is very strategic. And I'm doing it because I know there's a bigger picture to this that's more powerful than me, that's more powerful than you. Like this is a collective movement beyond the businesses and the communities that I'm creating.
Yeah, and just for younger listeners out there, this goes to show that, being in your 30s is not too late to go after what it is that you want.
It is not. It was.
You're just beginning.
Yeah, for me, it was chapter 2 of my life, if you want to call it that. It was really a pivotal moment. Not to say that it was easy. I mean, geez, there were so many moments when I'm like, did I do the right thing? How silly of me to leave without my stuff, But there's an expression I always say when things get tough one day, this will all make for a really great story. It'll all make for a really
Mhm.
great story one day. It'll all make for a really good story one day. I hope.
Didn't you write a book as
I
well?
did. It's called The Audacity to Own It. And it talks about that. I spent a lot of time talking about my father and the lessons he taught me, which at the time that he was trying to teach them to me, I thought he was crazy. So one example we just brought it up is the fact that he doesn't have any friends. And it's not because nobody likes him. It's because when I was growing up, as a kid, you want everybody to like you. And I wanted to have lots of friends. And my father kept trying to tell me, you don't need a lot of friends. You need one or two, like die hard,
Mhm.
go-to friends, ride or dies. You don't need tons of friends. You need people to respect you, but you don't need a ton of friends. I thought he was nuts.
Mhm.
I thought he was nuts until I went through my divorce. And I realized that if I'm going to rebuild my life and go through hard moments in my life, I really need to focus on myself and gaining my own self-confidence, and not let other people influence my decisions. You know, decisions need to be your own decisions. And yeah. So one of the problems.
So what is your book called?
Oh,
Just if listeners want to get a
sure. It's
copy.
called The Audacity to Own It, and it's on Amazon.
Okay. And is it available in the US as well? We
Yes.
do have a lot of US listeners. Okay, awesome.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, let's take it back because I want to learn more about your
Mhm.
childhood. You mentioned that there was tension. You're walking on eggshells a lot. Education was something that you and your brothers had to focus
Mhm.
on. Where did you find time for fun, and what did you do for fun growing up?
There wasn't a lot of time for fun. It was
No.
I wasn't allowed out much.
Mm.
I was allowed to play. Oh, we grew up in an apartment, so we were allowed to play in the backyard, but only for maybe a couple of hours a day in the summer. Really didn't do much. I spent a lot of time at home. I spent a lot of time with my mother in the kitchen, cleaning and
Hmm.
cleaning over and over and over again. I
Did you have resentment towards your brothers for not having to do
Not so
that?
much my older brother. I did have resentment towards my younger brother. So my older brother, I never really resented him because I knew he had been through a lot
Through a lot, yeah.
coming to Canada. For my younger brother, in through my eyes, there was no excuse. He was my baby
Yeah, he had it
brother. He
easy.
got everything that he wanted. I remember once he wanted a turtle, and I thought it was this silliest thing. And my parents went out and bought a turtle for him, and I resented him for that. So I had a lot of resentment towards my younger brother, but but on the flip side, I got to spend a lot of time with my mother. My mother is very traditional. She's very
Mm.
submissive to my father. But what I appreciate now is that you see them together and they're just the happiest, simplest couple. I mean, they eat
Hmm.
two little bowls of rice a day with maybe like a little piece of vegetable and that's it. Like that's their meal, and they watch TV. They watch it, it's on, but they'll sit there and hold hands and watch TV pretty much all day long.
What do your parents think of their fiery, sassy, go-getter daughter now, this loud girl that was so quiet growing up?
They have no idea what I do for a living. So with all of this, with everything that I do, I mean, if you Google my name, you'll see I've been in the Globe and Mail, I've been on TV, I have the book. They don't even know that I own a business, let alone two. And the reason why is not so much for my mother. My mother doesn't care what I do as long as I'm happy and I'm fed. So
Hmm.
those are the two things with my mother. But for my father, we didn't have the best of relationships, and like I said, a lot of how I behave and act and the decisions I make are almost to kind of show him that I could be successful. But the irony out of all this is that he doesn't even know what I do for a living.
What you're doing.
Exactly. So I remember when we did my book launch in March, my husband asked me, do we invite your father? And I'm like, and so we had about 125, 150 people at the book launch. And I said, no, because I don't want the first time for my father to know about all the things that are Lin, to be at my book launch, for people to go, for strangers to go up to my father and say, oh my gosh, your daughter inspires me. I just picture my father's
Uh-huh.
face. What does my daughter do that's
Like,
so,
what do you mean?
what could she possibly do? So no,
So, how often do you keep in communication with them?
we see each other. So we don't live far from each other, but we see each other maybe 5, 6 times a year. We'll go over for lunch.
Oh,
Yeah, so
really?
we'll go over for
Okay.
lunch. My father, I communicate with him by text because he has like this grandfathered plan, cell phone plan that's $9 a month. So there are no minutes included. And so we text each other. It's kind of militant. It's like, hi, dad, happy birthday. Thanks. Hope the family's
Uh-huh.
well. You know, it's very straightforward. When we go to the house, it's funny. I'll bring the kids over. I'll bring the kids over. They're adults now, so they're not really kids. So all of us will sit there for lunch, and we could literally go through the entire lunch without my father saying a word to me. He'll ask everybody else how it's going, how's
Uh-huh.
school. He'll ask my husband, how my husband's a teacher, so how are the students? How's the school year going? We could go through the whole time without my father speaking to me.
Wow, no wonder your husband said daddy issues. Like that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's I don't know if I'm going to acknowledge it ever. I don't know how I'm going to move forward with this. I just don't have the headspace to deal with it right
Right.
now. So for the moment,
Mm-hmm.
it's nothing that I want to address. If
Mm-hmm.
there's anything to even address, I have so many other things going on that are priority. I remember talking to one
Yeah.
of my girlfriends, and she has a similar relationship with, or she had a similar relationship with her father. So her advice to me was, you have to speak to him. I said, listen, with all due respect, right now is not the time because I don't have time to get distracted. In
Mm-hmm.
my book, The Audacity to Own It, it talks about um, taking the emotions out of your decision. So practicing emotional detachment from your decision making. And one of the issues that is common with people is how do we deal with relationships that are no longer serving us? You know, like we get stuck in relationships, whether that's romantic or with family or friendships. How do we how do we get stuck and how do we get unstuck? And one thing that's common is your relationship with your family. So if your family is toxic or they just don't respect you, how do you cut the ties?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what my father and I have. Like we could sit there
Mm-hmm.
for 2 3 hours and not acknowledge each other. And I remember that used to bother me until I didn't let
Mm-hmm.
it bother me, because this is
Mm-hmm.
not about me, it's more about him, or maybe it is about both of us, but it's not something that
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to dwell on because I have other things to work on. And one day, hopefully we'll sit down and iron this out, and maybe there was nothing there. Maybe there were no issues to begin with.
He also, I don't know your father at all, but a lot of, based on what you have told me, and his decision to not be friends with so many people, he doesn't sound like he's the sort of guy that talks a lot
No,
either.
he doesn't.
So
So
yeah.
maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just we don't
Mm-hmm.
have anything to say to each other, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you were a teenager, you weren't allowed to have boyfriends, I'm
Oh
assuming.
no, oh no, not at all.
So how did you meet your ex?
I was a student. He worked at McDonald's. He was cute. So then we
Uh-huh.
started dating. And funny story, I when I found out I was pregnant, so I was 18 when I was pregnant, and
Mm-hmm.
we made the decision together that we were going to keep the baby, not have an abortion. I was obviously going to tell my mother first and not my father. But the problem is, my mother only speaks Khmer, and I didn't know how to say in Cambodian, I'm pregnant. So I did a literal
Mm-hmm.
translation to her, and she said, okay, no problem. I'll tell your father. And then she did tell my father, and then he came into the bedroom and he told me to get an abortion or move out. So I moved out a month later. Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
so that's how that happened, which again sounds tough, um but I needed it. His what he told me was, if you're going to make an adult decision, you're going to have to go out and be an adult. And even
Uh-huh.
though it was tough, he's not wrong. He's not wrong. I mean, would my parents have just left me there, stranded and homeless? No, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, if you have choices here in Canada and you choose to start a family, so now you have to go out and start a family.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. You said you were in university then or high school?
So we're in Quebec. I was in CEGEP. I was in CEGEP then. Yeah.
Right.
So I was my
Okay.
last semester of CEGEP. So I have my CEGEP. I never went on to university, so I never finished school,
Mm.
which could be one of the reasons why my father doesn't see eye to eye with me, because both my brothers went on not only to university, but my older brother, he's a CPA auditor, and my younger brother has a PhD. So and then and then
Mm.
the only daughter is a CEGEP graduate.
But you all are high achievers,
I
so
know, I
it doesn't
know.
really matter. Yeah. So for listeners who aren't in Quebec, because I think not a lot of people in the rest of Canada would know either, but CEGEP is sort of like a pre-university thing.
It would be the equivalent of, let's say, grade 12. So we have we're the
Hmm.
only area in the entire world that has this system. So it would be the equivalent of like grade 12. So our high
Hmm.
schools
And
finish
it's
at grade 11, and then you do 2 years of CEGEP,
mm,
and then you go on to university.
do you take it in preparation of going to university? or is it a requirement to get your diploma?
It's in preparation for a university, so it's a completely separate
Okay.
diploma. Although, if
Okay.
you finish high school, so if you get your high school diploma at when you finish grade 11 and you decide to go into the workforce, you could just wait
Hmm.
until the age of 21 and apply to university as a mature student.
Okay. So when you were growing up, did you have any idea what you wanted to do with your life?
Um, One of my first memories was I wanted to be a teacher. And the only reason I wanted to be a
Hmm.
teacher is because my grade two teacher, Miss Masson, I still remember her name. She was just so cool. She was well dressed,
Hmm.
always wore the nicest heels. And this is going to sound really disgusting, but I remember she used to do story time with us, and she would take off one of her heels and let us pass it around like in admiration. So as a kid, like we thought it was like the coolest thing, but now as an adult looking back, why did she give us her shoe, and why did we think it was so fascinating? But I did.
Honestly, little kids love high heels. Like my daughter loves heels.
I but that's your daughter, right? Not a random
Yeah,
teacher.
right.
So the first thing I wanted to do was be a teacher. And then
Uh-huh.
I got over that. And then I didn't know what I wanted to do until maybe the ninth or 10th grade. I wanted to be a journalist, and hopefully a
Hmm.
sports journalist. So my dream after high school was to go to the US and either write for the Washington Post or work for CNN or work for Slam Magazine, which is a basketball magazine based out of New York.
Uh-huh, I
Yeah,
remember.
so that
Yeah.
was my dream. And then I got pregnant. So none of that ever happened.
Mm.
But in any case, I remember telling my father that's what I wanted to do, because every summer we had cousins that would come up to Montreal and spend this from Washington, D.C., and they would spend the summer with us. And this is my mom's cousin. So my mom's cousin would say, if you do want to go to the US, you're more than welcome to stay with us, which I thought was cool until I told my father. And my father said, no, like, you are not going to the US. It's too dangerous. Anyways, I ended up getting pregnant at 18, and none of that ever happened. And I never became a journalist. Although now I'm getting back into writing through my content creation on LinkedIn and my newsletters, and like I do my own content. So it's my way of sharing my love of writing. I
Hmm.
still love I
Hmm.
still love writing. Obviously don't get to do it as much, but I do it through I do it through my content.
You mentioned that your relationship was further strained when your father basically kicked you out. Did he end up? Did your parents end up seeing or getting to know your kids when they were babies?
Yes. So when they politely asked me to leave, they I didn't speak to my father for about 6 months. So I was still pregnant. And right before I gave birth, he called me and said, "Hey, let's go for lunch," which he never does. So we did go for lunch, and we kind of talked about it. And that's when he explained to me, "Listen, I didn't kick you out because I don't love you. I exactly what I explained to you, which was, if you're going to make an adult decision, you are going to have to go and be an adult and figure this out on your own. We will always be here, as a worst case scenario, but we will not be, we're not going to be responsible for this." So my parents actually have a great relationship with my kids. So yeah, like that was, there's never been an issue with the kids. They love their grandchildren. They're very proud of them. Like my
Mhm.
father, my father likes to tell my kids, "You kids are so smart, just like your uncles." So that's part of the running joke. I know.
The
I
audacity.
know. But again, this will all make for a great story one day, right? Just take it with a grain of salt. Luckily, I have a good sense of humor about things. So does my
Right.
husband, because he's there when he hears these little side remarks, and we just laugh it off.
How did you make it work with being 18, pregnant? You had a partner to help you, but were you still in school at that point? Did you decide to work or just take a break from the workforce?
There was no breaking from the workforce because both of us were young, so both of us needed to work.
Hmm.
When I had my son, it was the year 2000. Back then, there was no there was maternity leave available through the federal government. There was no paternity leave at that time. And maternity leave in Canada was, I think, 4 months, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big
Yeah.
change. I took 18
Yeah.
months away from work.
So,
Like, that is a big change.
well, I know the difference because when my
Wow.
daughter was born 3 years later, that's when they extended the maternity leave and fathers were allowed to take leave as well. And then I think around that time, Quebec came up with their own parental leave program. So our parental leave program is actually quite different from the rest of Canada. We're a little bit more advanced. We allow up to 2 years. But this is all stuff I never got to take advantage of because I had my kids early on. But when I had my son, there was no leave because we just were young, working kind of minimum wage jobs. So I went back to work right away. Not doing anything crazy. I was a cashier somewhere. I mean,
So who took care of your son while you were working?
so my ex-husband would work during the day. He worked a regular 9 to 5 warehouse work, general labor, and I would work at night or on the weekends.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we did. And then a couple of years later, that's when I got into finance. I had a financial advisor come over and he gave me the sales pitch. He's like, hey, well, have you ever thought of a career in finance? And I looked at him and said, no, because I don't really have much schooling. And he gave me the sales pitch and kind of explained what I would need to do to get into the industry. It looked easy enough and the rest is history.
Yeah. So what do you have to do to get into
finance?
Being a financial advisor?
It's not that complicated to do. So even you actually don't need a university education if you're working on your own. If you do decide to work for a wealth management firm or with a bank, a lot of times they'll ask for university. But if you're independent like I am, as long as you're 18 years old, you need to pass the provincial exams in order to become a financial advisor. And then that's it. It's really it. Because it works out for me, I'm okay with it. But I don't know how I feel about that. I think it should be a little bit more difficult. But I'm okay with it for me because it works for me. But that's it. And I've been.
Are you saying then that there's financial advisors out there that just shouldn't be?
Oh yeah, I mean, I know financial advisors who have a university education in finance, and they shouldn't be. I'm an excellent financial advisor, and I could run circles around any financial advisor that you throw in front of me. And I'm not just talking about investments. I'm talking about knowledge. I'll give you an example. A lot of advisors, particularly at banks, don't know how to work with people who are newly arrived. So when it comes to certain accounts, you need to be a resident for income tax purposes, or you need to be a resident, period. There's a difference between both. And I've had clients who come to me I have quite a few clients from France and from South America. And when they go to the bank and try to open up an account, they're often told they can't because of XYZ reason, because they just came to Canada, whatever it is, when in fact that's not true. I mean, it's completely false. So when I was starting out, I was intimidated by the industry, especially being a young woman. I'm looking young. I was 23 when I started and I looked 16. I worked at a wealth management firm at the time, and it was a very macho type of office, and they made me feel inferior. Like, that's what it was.
Okay.
And then when I decided to go into private practice, like I had my own firm for the last 12, 13 years, I decided I was going to create my firm the way that I wanted, to work with the people that I wanted to serve. And now we have a team, and these are all very kind-hearted, like people who will hold your hand, no judgment. We have a good business going, and that's how I wanted to build my business.
So you do a lot of speaking engagements now, and you mentioned that you're very active on LinkedIn. Can you give me sort of an elevator pitch of everything that you do now?
Very quickly, when people ask, what do I do? I'm a financial advisor, tech founder, and community builder. All I want to do is to help people make money and overcome their barriers to make money. That's it. And at the end of the day, like whatever financial problems we have in this world, inequities, I like to find the solutions to those problems. And that's it. I think enough is enough already. Like nobody needs to be a billionaire. There's not a single person who needs to be a billionaire. Um, and I just wish that the average person could find it within themselves to believe that they could make more money, that wealth is not evil. I know a lot of people who want to give back, but you need money to give back.
Exactly.
And why not create businesses or do the right things with your money to grow and scale so that you can be in a position to give back? And if more of us thought like that, we wouldn't have this. There wouldn't be this 1% that we keep referring to. Why do the same people stay in power? Why do the rich stay rich? Because they know how to use the system. But the system is there for all of us.
Yeah, you just have to figure out how to navigate it, and that's what you're there
Yeah,
for.
exactly. And you know what? If you don't do it, then people who understand the system, who might not have the best of intentions, they're going to do it. And I see this in the tech space. So when I started my tech company, there's this idea that there's tons of funding available for us. And yes, there is, but you have to check off the boxes. And some of those boxes that can be checked in order to get funding are women-owned, Black entrepreneurs, there's disability, like people with disabilities. These are some of the boxes that need to be checked in order to get extra funding. And I'll say it with women because women are always the ones who say, you know what, I want to do the right thing. You have to be honest with this. If you want to get the funding, you have to create a business that checks off the boxes. Now, there is a line between honesty and dishonesty, and sometimes there's a gray line between both. I know of someone who won a pitch competition, and they won prize money for the LGBTQ contest. And when I found out about it afterwards, I said to myself, but wait a second, I don't think they are part of that community. So how did they win? Well, all they had to do was check off the box.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yes. So if you don't do it, it's like, it's related but not unrelated. It's like women will not apply for a job unless they check off all the boxes, whereas a man will just
60%.
Yeah, if even, are you, like here in Quebec, all of the job applications are mentioned bilingualism. So many men will say, I'm sort of bilingual, depends, and then they'll apply for the job. But we won't do it when it comes to funding or setting up our businesses. Do it. The money's there. You're not being dishonest. You want to do something good.
How did you get involved with supporting other women in businesses and tech?
Well, when I started my own tech company. So if we go back to, I run a community here called Women and Money Montreal, where I teach financial literacy online, and we also host workshops for entrepreneurs, etc. So that I started at the beginning of COVID, and it still exists today. We're actually transitioning to a not-for-profit and eventually a charity. It takes a bit of time to transition. And when I started my tech company, I realized that the tech industry is completely different from every other business sector. And I couldn't figure out why. So I thought that I could just hop into the tech sector as someone who's been in business for 20 years and start my business and kind of do it as I've always done. But it's different. I'm also not a technical person. So I was going in as a non-technical person. How do you build a tech company or a mobile app or a platform when you're not technical? So I had to navigate that on my own. And I say on my own, but not really, because I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by people who are very technical and who are willing to share their advice. And I realized in doing so is that right now, when we talk about the economy, everyone's looking for the same thing. How do we make extra money? How do we make extra money without working another 70 hours a week? A lot of women are especially going through this because a lot of women are caregivers of their children, caregivers of aging parents. It's hard to be a woman and be like the primary homemaker and have a career, you never sleep. And so I get asked a lot by women, how do I make money without having to actually work 70 hours for it? And as I kind of navigated the tech industry, I realized, get into tech. Get into tech. There's so many no code platforms available for you to just start with a proof of concept of an idea. So I run into a lot of women who have an idea for an app. Like, there should be an app for this. Usually it's related to whatever it is they do already in their career. And they sit on the idea because they're not technical. They're not software engineers. They don't know how to code. So what do I do with this idea? And nowadays there's so much access to no coding platforms where you could prompt your way to build just a prototype of what you're trying to build, just to show somebody. And I tell women, I'm trying to teach women now, start with that. If you're a non-technical person and you have this idea, start with this just to develop your business idea, just to develop your proof of concept. And in doing so, I also explain how the tech sector works. Like, there's two ways that you could go about this. You could build something that generates recurring revenue, like Canva, like any one of the subscription platforms that we use, or you build a platform that eventually has a value that you could sell to another company that gets acquired. And I give them examples of those types of companies. So there's two ways of building technology, and this is a way that we could generate wealth or another form of money without having to necessarily work 70 hours a week. And I know this because I meet so many founders, mainly men, who are software developers, who are in the industry, who understand the game. And what they do is they build something that's so basic that they know that if I just develop this for the next two to 3 years, I could sell it for $3 million to XYZ company. And that's what I'm trying to teach women now.
So you own a tech company as well. What is it?
So it's called OWNI. It's OWNI.ai, and we're a platform that helps people find a partner to co-buy real estate with. So we're actually launching in 2.5 weeks. 2.5 weeks.
Oh, you made the announcement here and come my voices.
You have to edit that though, because we haven't announced
it.
Okay. But we are.
What's that?
We're announcing it. We're not announcing it yet. We're releasing it December 3rd. So you have to edit.
Okay. Edit it or wait until after December 3rd?
Wait until after December 3rd. It's going to be live December 3rd, so it's OWNI.ai.
Exciting.
Yeah, and basically we created it because there's a demand. I mean, home buying is out of reach, and we've been talking about this for a long time. I did a pitch recently at a big tech conference, and I said it. I've been in finance for 20 years. We've been talking about home prices being through the roof for 20 years. So who's going to solve this? Well, it's just going to be me. That's how we're going to do it. In my women's community, what we found is that the demographic that hasn't been addressed for anything that has to do with wealth generation or finances are single people. There is a whole lot of single people out there, not just young people. There are also people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are single, and they do all the right things. They have good credit. They have a good job. They have a down payment. But when you're by yourself, it is harder to qualify for a mortgage on a decent sized house. You're in Vancouver. Montreal is less expensive, but it's still expensive. Vancouver, Toronto are it's almost impossible as a single person. And so what we're doing is we're taking a concept that exists already, which is co-buying. I mean, co-buying has been done by partners, by real estate investors, immigrants forever. We're taking a concept that exists and turning it into a platform where people who don't have someone to co-sign with or co-buy with, they could find a partner there.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I saw it on the news a couple of years ago. Are you seeing that that's a trend right now? Is that why you decided to create this?
I didn't see it. I saw that there's a trend in single people. I know that there are other platforms out there. There are co-buying platforms. One of the differences with our platform is we're really focusing on community and the people, whereas other platforms focus on matching people with properties. I mean, There's so many websites where you could find properties, but there's a lack of co-buying platforms that really focus on the person. So in the same way that I built my financial services company, I built it on community. We're taking that same concept and using it to develop and grow the reach of OWNI, which is through community. And through community, through education, how do you buy a property with somebody else? How do you protect yourself? These are the two main questions that we get asked. And so you'll see slowly that we're going to educate people on the platform and also on social media on how you do it, taking an old concept and making it mainstream.
Does your app match strangers then with similar lifestyles? And
Exactly. So whereas most other co-buying platforms focus on matching people with the properties, we are matching people with people. And
yeah, so you're going one step further.
Exactly, because the average person doesn't know how to find it's basically a business transaction. But when you invest in real estate with somebody else, whether it's a spouse or your sister or whoever it is a business transaction. So how do you find that partner? And one of the rebuttals I get is, well, it's kind of like if I wanted to buy with someone, I would buy with a family member or someone that I know. Okay, well, what if you don't have someone that you know who's willing to co-sign? That's number one. And number two, even if you buy with somebody that you adore, are you taking the right steps to protect yourself if something happens? And the majority of people, especially when it's someone who's really close to them, the majority of people don't have that in place. And I know this from a financial advisor standpoint, because we're going through so many divorce files in the last, I don't know what the official stats are with Stats Canada, but there's a definite increase in the amount of divorces over the last couple of years. And I'm sure it has to do with COVID. So we've seen, everybody's in love when they buy a house with their partner. But when there's a breakdown, it can get very petty. And the thing is, when you buy with your partner, when you buy with your spouse, you're in love. So you don't think about
there's no intention of breaking up.
Exactly. And when you buy the house initially, you don't usually have a draft agreement on what happens if there's a breakdown of the marriage. And so what I've seen now is such pettiness. It's unfortunate. For example, one spouse wants to buy out the other spouse in a divorce, but they don't agree on the fair market value of the property. One spouse is being ridiculous because they're the one who's being bought out. So of course they want the higher price, even though it's $500,000 higher than what it actually is. So how do you protect yourself? And this is part of the education. You really have to have the legal aspects taken care of in order to mitigate the risk, whether you're buying with someone you love or a complete stranger.
If you just like ChatGPT or, go on AI, will they be able to do that for you? Or are there specific platforms or apps that you could use to help you create an app?
So there are lots of them. So I kind of call them like the Wix of, like back in the day, if you wanted to build a website, you would need to know how to code. But now there are so many platforms that you could drag and drop. It's the same idea with no coding platforms now when it comes to apps, except that they're typically prompt based. So similar to ChatGPT. ChatGPT actually has a no code, a vibe coding option built in. I've never personally used it, but I do know it exists. There's Lovable. That's a platform that you could use to build your own app. I personally use Bolt, Bolt. That's another platform. And there's also Figma. So Figma, there's Figma Maker, which you could prompt your way to build the prototype for whatever app or web app that you're trying to build. And that is good enough if you're building something small, like let's say for your community, for your business. If let's say you're a photographer and you want to create a website, that clients can view their photos on, it's fine. If you want to raise capital and, go the commercialization route, eventually you'll need to hire someone who's technical, who can code. But if you're just building something small that doesn't store, data, a lot of data, and it's just for like your community or your friends, you could definitely vibe code. But it's a good place.
Oh, very
Yeah, it's a good
cool.
place to start without having to invest a lot of money. I mean, it's what, 10 to
Mm-hmm.
$20 a month for these things. And at least you could build
Mm-hmm.
something to show people and ask them, hey, would you use this? Would you pay
Yeah.
for it?
Yeah, exactly. As you said, a prototype.
Exactly.
So your app that's coming out that no one's going to know about until December,
Yes, that one.
is it available only for like Quebec residents?
No, so we're going to launch in Montreal because that's where I live,
Mm,
but almost right away, so in early 2026, we're going to launch it in Toronto and Vancouver, those two markets because they're the most expensive markets when it comes to real estate. So the demand is there. How we generate revenue for the time being is that we're lead generators for mortgage lenders. So that's because I'm in the industry. I know the breakdown of that. So we have partnerships with mortgage lenders in both Toronto and in Ontario and in BC, because in Canada the
mm-hmm.
mortgage industry is regulated by province. So we have to have partnerships in every province that we do business, and then eventually we'll add on other aspects. So I have as an example, I have an existing partnership with a company in Portugal. I've been working with them for 3 years, and they help
Uh-huh.
foreigners purchase property in Portugal. So they do the financing, they help you find the property, they even offer property management. So eventually, once we get the site, once we get OWNI up and we have users, we'll introduce that. If you want to buy a property in other countries, if you want to buy investment properties, it's we're not keeping it caged up. It's basically you
Mm-hmm.
want to buy something, but you can't do it on your own. You're going to come to our website to find a partner in order to make it happen.
Okay. So you'll have sort of like a directory of people to connect with, and that would include like lawyers as well and
Exactly.
real estate advisors. Okay.
Exactly.
Oh, very cool.
Exactly.
All
But the
right. So the whole thing is you match people with someone
mhm,
else to buy a
mhm.
house. And in that process, you have recommendations on who to reach out to in certain cities to complete that process.
Exactly. For the mortgage aspect, these are in the beginning
Mm-hmm.
as we launch, these will be my direct referrals because I'm in the industry, so I know the professionals personally. Eventually, like when
Mm-hmm.
we roll out into the US, we'll set up partnerships with mortgage lenders in every state that we do business. So one of the mortgage
Mm-hmm.
lenders that we are working with here in Canada, they're already in the US. So it'll be an easy transition. But
Mm-hmm.
every jurisdiction has their rules when it comes to mortgage lending. Typically in Canada, it's by province, and in the US, it's by state. And we'll explore in other countries as well how it
Yeah.
works.
So are they just recommendations? Like, can people just use your app solely for the matchmaking purpose? But they, if they have their own lawyer, real estate lawyer, they can just go to that. They don't
So
need to use.
technically they can, but we highly recommend using someone from the platform to remove biases out of there. So let's pretend it's me and you.
Mm.
We find each other on the app, but you happen to have tons of real
Hmm.
estate experience, but you're a shark. You're not a very nice person. So you recommend that we'll find a property together, and you recommend a lawyer. Well, they're working in your best interest, and I am just someone who's starting out. I don't know anything. I think you're a nice person. So for the sake of safety and mitigating risk, we highly recommend that people stay on the platform and go with someone on the platform who doesn't have a
Okay.
relationship with either party.
Okay. Got it. I wanted to just ask about your inspiration. Like, where are you getting the drive to do all this?
I have to. I just have to.
Yeah.
It's that's all I could. That's the only way I could describe it. I I have a voice. I don't care what other people say, and I see I almost feel that I'm the voice for those who don't or can't speak up for themselves. I just have to do it because if I don't do it, nobody else will. And I'm that person who will. There was a situation recently in a group chat where a person was being condescending to other people. And this is like a kind of a business related group chat. We're trying to plan for stuff, right? So we're going to have to learn how to work
Hmm.
together. And I had to speak up and say something. So I'm here to speak up for those and to find solutions for the people who don't think that they can. And it's one of the reasons why I speak so much. Like, I'm in front of audiences, because I'm very self-motivated, but the majority of us are not. The majority of us, we get caught up in the I can't do this, or we get caught up in the barriers. We get caught up in thinking that we can't do things. When in front of every audience that I speak to, whether it's an event with men and women or just women, in front of every audience that I speak at, I would say at least 25% of the people who are attending are immigrants. People who came here with just a bag, barely knew the language, didn't even know what snow was, and they came here and they make it work. And for me, that, like my parents, for me, that is hard. That is like, I couldn't fathom picking up tomorrow, packing my things and going to another country. I don't care how hot it is. I think that's that's extremely hard. So what do we all really have to do to overcome whatever barriers it is that we're facing? And yeah, life gets hard. I was a single mom of four. I mean, I know it could get hard, but I also know that I also believe in myself that I could overcome anything. So if I can inspire that for other people, then I've done my job.
So you're doing so much right now. Do you have plans to slow down, or are you're just going to keep going?
I'm going to keep going until I don't want to. And
Uh-huh.
in all honesty, I do take a lot of time for myself. I know people think that I don't, but I do. It's a non-negotiable. I've gone through burnout. So when I work, and I probably work a lot faster and more efficiently than the average person because I've made a lot of mistakes, so I've figured out the mistakes. I have downtime every single day. Otherwise, I completely burn out. So even though I might work longer days, they're slow. They're slow. And when it's time to slow down officially, then I'll slow down and it'll be my choice.
I feel like whenever there's a purpose, like a strong purpose, something that's bigger than you in what you're doing, it doesn't often feel like you're working.
It doesn't. I don't feel, for most of the time during the day, it's not work for me. The only time it feels like work is when I'm doing admin. When I'm doing admin that I should have delegated and I didn't, but for everything else, this is not work. Like, I enjoy it.
It's community.
It's community.
Yeah, it's community and connection.
Community connection. It's great for business. I'm not going to lie. And it works and it inspires people.
We're going to wrap up now. I just want to ask you what I ask everyone else. What are a couple things that you want listeners to take away from your story?
If listeners could take anything away from this, it's you have to start with you. You have to. It's so cliche, but you have to believe in yourself because nobody is going to save you except for you. Have the audacity to make your own decisions, even if they're wrong. If you want to do something, give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen? Ask yourself those questions. And, strength in numbers. One of the reasons I do what I do is because I don't believe the 1% need to control everything anymore. There's the 1% and then there's the 99% of us. So if half of the 99% of us believe that we could build something bigger, greater, stronger, there won't be a 1% anymore. Like I said, nobody needs to be a billionaire. So I think the majority of us are capable of generating wealth and giving back. And that's what this world really needs.
If people want to get in touch with you or connect with you, where can they find you?
Everywhere. You can find me on, you could go to my website, linsok.ca. So that's linsok.ca. You can find out all about me. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, on Instagram, as well as Facebook.
Okay, this is your sign to get out there and do whatever it is that you've been thinking about doing but haven't done yet. As Lin mentioned, she's the founder of OWNI.ai, a tech startup helping people buy real estate more affordably through co-buying. And right now, she's interested in talking to people who thought about buying property but didn't, whether it was a potential first home, a dream home. an investment or commercial property. The purpose is to understand what held you back and how you feel about buying with someone else in order to make it happen. And I put a link to book an interview with her in the show notes. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show today with Lin. And if you did, please share it with someone you think would enjoy it too. Khmer Voices will be back in 2 weeks. Ak kun karan for listening.